you. Good evening and welcome to the City of Highland Park Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing for March 16th, 2023. Carl, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Member Trushansky?
Present.
How do you pronounce your name, sir?
Trushansky.
Trushansky, okay. Member Beck is absent. Member Yablon?
Here.
Member Zaransky? Is absent. Member Hendrick?
Here.
Vice Chair Bay?
Here.
And Chair Cullither?
Here.
Chair, there are 5 members present. We have a quorum for business.
Thank you. Have my colleagues had an opportunity to review the minutes from the very quick meeting of March 2nd?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion.
Member Hendrick would make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented in the packet.
Member Yablon seconds.
Carl, you can note Member Zaransky just arrived.
Okay,
Sorry.
moment I'd like to.
No problem. You were looking down. I didn't know if you noticed.
Okay, so this is a vote for the minutes, to adopt the minutes as presented in the packet. Motion by Member Hendrick, second by Member Yablon. Member Trushansky?
Aye. Aye.
Member Beck is absent. Member Yablon?
Aye.
Member Zaransky?
I'm going to abstain as I was not present.
Hendrick?
Aye.
Chair Bay, or excuse me, Vice Chair Bay?
Aye.
Chair Cullither?
I'm sorry, I abstain. I was not present either.
Okay, I still have 4 ayes, so that motion passes.
Thank you. The publication date for new business was March 1st, 2023. For the members of the public, is there anything you'd like to bring before us that is not on the agenda this evening? Not seeing any. We have has that moved to new business then? Okay.
Planner 2 Fayetteville had it under new business. They didn't, there was a new notice. There were new zoning relief being requested.
Okay, that's fine. So the application before us is 2022-VAR-030, the property at 178 Prospect Avenue. The applicants are Charles E. and Lauren M. Wood. Carl, do you have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Burhop. I'm a senior planner with the City of Highland Park in the Planning Division. So this is for the 178 Prospect Avenue application. Property is a corner lot. This is the location of the property. The chair already stated the applicant's names. The proposal is to construct a garage with office space attached to the existing home by a breezeway. To an extent, some of this information has been gone over before. This is a continued item, but it's also new because new zoning relief was noticed for. And so I'll just briefly restate the other items. It's in the R4 zoning district as well as the lakefront overlay zone. And the existing home and detached garage were constructed in 1910 based on the county assessor records. Okay, so how does this show up? So good. Hopefully that's legible or readable from distance. So this is an update to an existing application that's been modified. So I'll just run through this. So there were the first 3 that carried over from the prior meeting and then 2 new on the end. So the first one regarding floor area, and this was in the report, and I got another slide on it, but the floor area relief is still being requested, but it's been reduced by 225 square feet. And so instead of asking for 870 square feet of total floor area, they're requesting 645 square feet. And I'll come back to that. I have a slide on that. The request for rear yard coverage has increased, and there's a reason for that, and I have a slide on that. The heritage tree request, well, I should be careful here. I said struck here. The applicant has not technically withdrawn it. In fact, that was a comment in my report. The city forester states that a heritage tree removal request is no longer needed or required based on the relocation of the garage. And I have a comment on that the applicant should withdraw the request. two new requests based on relocating the garage, encroach 9 feet and 6 and change inches into the required rear yard to the south of the property, and then encroach 19 feet with the required front yard on the west. But site plan will paint a better picture. This is an aerial of the property. This is from Planner 2 Faywell's slides. It's a corner lot, front yard on the north and on the west. Side yard minimum on the east, and then the required rear yard on the south. And the board is well acquainted with corner lots and how the City of Highland Park zoning code treats them. This is from Planner Faywell's presentation. Another photo from Planner Faywell's presentation. This is also from Planner Faywell's presentation, shows the existing conditions from the Plata survey that was submitted. Okay, so, that shouldn't say survey, sorry, that should say site plan. So this is the proposed site plan. This is the third and current iteration. It identifies the buildable box in the middle. So the garage has been reoriented. So this is the second version that was back in February. And so the board can see that it's been reoriented. So in the version back in February, the garage and the breezeway was entirely within the buildable area, did not need any setback relief, still needed rear yard relief for the coverage for the driveway, needed the floor area relief, and then of course the issue here is with the heritage tree on the north. The garage has been moved further away from the heritage tree. However, it now physically encroaches within the required rear yard. Here's where it encroaches within the required rear yard, and it physically comes out into the front yard. And so that's two new elements of relief. And then this also caused an increase in the rear yard coverage request. However, the city forester states that it no longer needs the heritage tree removal permit as it's been moved further away. And I can't tell how well you can see this lines, but the breezeway is fine. It doesn't need any relief. The breezeway is within the buildable area. And that's the plan from February. This was the first one. I'll skip over that unless the board wants me to come back to that. So the FAR analysis has been updated. Overall, the request has been slightly reduced by 225 square feet from when this was here in February. I do want to point out this is an FAR request, but it is within the bonus allowance. However, because of how the bonus regulations are written, the applicant cannot take advantage of that because of the request for the coverage relief and then the two setback encroachments. But that does provide context. The request is within the bonus allowance, but they just cannot use it because of the setback issues. Rear yard analysis, right, so that's increased. That's increased because of the relocation of the garage. Other comments, the city forester is here. I'll let the city forester speak for themselves. Though I will summarize by stating that the heritage tree removal request is no longer required. The city forester does request the applicant look at changing the breezeway connection to further mitigate impacts. I would like to point out on the record, though I can never state for sure, you cannot state for sure what would or would not be approved. It depends what's submitted and how it's submitted, but I still do want to indicate it on the record. So I think that the city forester was talking about how it's proposed to connect here on the east side. If it was somehow moved further south to connect on the north side, it would even have less of an impact. I would just say from a staff perspective and also for the public's information that that's probably something that could be approved administratively if the Zoning Board of Appeals in their collective judgment approves the overall request. And I only point that out just because I want that on the record, because should this be approved and should the breezeway change locations, I just wanted on the record that that was discussed.
It would still be in the buildable area.
Correct, right. It would still be in the buildable area, so that's why, right, correct. I need to read comments. A neighbor, Igor Kane, requested I read comments. I said I would. Chairman, would you like me to do that?
Yes,
would you like
please,
me to
Carl.
wait, or would you like me to do
No,
that
if
now?
you would do it now.
By putting this in my presentation, I don't forget it, so that's good. Okay, so this is an email from Igor Konevsky of 162 Prospect Avenue. I received this email today at 3:30 p.m. I will read only that part for which Igor requested, and I will read that now. So, quoting Igor's email, quote, "Having reviewed the agenda packet posted prior to the meeting on March 16, 2023, we have no additional questions or concerns with regard to requested Section 150 variances. Our understanding is that the removal permit for Heritage Tree is no longer sought. We appreciate our neighbors' willingness to alter the plans to preserve trees that benefit both parties and support the plan as presented. The forester's memo notes that minor changes may be needed to improve the outcome of the heritage tree. We rely on the forester's professional opinion and have no additional feedback, as long as care is taken to preserve mature trees as outlined in the forester's memo." Unquote. Or end of quote, rather.
Thank you, Carl.
And then, again, this is just the summary slide, and again, this was included in the packet. It just indicates the relief being requested. So there are 4 total elements of relief. The floor area request, which is within the bonus allowance, and decreased by 225 square feet from the prior request. The coverage area, which did increase, and then the front yard along the west and the south yard to the rear yard to the south. And then that the heritage tree, again, I used the phrase struck here, but in hindsight, I should have maybe stated no longer needed for the city forester. And then, so there are no longer, so you can take those standards I put in front of you. You're only looking at Chapter 150. There are heritage tree standards up there, but that's for another application later. So you can set the heritage tree standards aside. And then, I don't necessarily know if it needs to be a condition of approval, but the applicant should withdraw their heritage tree removal request. For an applicant, and again, I'll let them speak for themselves. I mean, I don't know, they probably don't want to withdraw that now until they have their approval, but let's just say that if the applicant does get an approval and they don't withdraw it, city staff will queue this up for potential denial at a future meeting. So that's why we would encourage the applicant to formally withdraw that heritage tree removal request if they are able to secure an approval. But again, that's more
Well,
notes for the record.
I would
don't
have
think-
an order up here if there was a heritage tree removal request, wouldn't I? Because it'd be 2 separate.
I guess I didn't provide one. Perhaps I should have.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Member Hendrick?
So in the packet, there's links and references to the packets and videos and minutes from our other meetings involving the same matter, if it's not technically the same application. In terms of building out the record, do we need to fully build out everything that was discussed during that? Or are we okay referencing what we already talked about?
Yes, so that's-
Procedural question.
Right, so that's a really good question. This is technically a new public hearing. I would say that you should err on the side of wanting to build out the new record to be thorough and complete. Having said that, as you said, staff was careful to link to prior packets in our report, which is now automatically a part of this record. So with that noted, though, I would certainly, this is technically a new hearing, so to the extent you feel a new record needs to be built, I would really encourage that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Carl? Not seeing any. Ben, would you like to say anything this evening on this matter?
Nothing. I'm certainly here to answer any questions about the process, but at this point, I think all the matters, should this application be approved, can be handled administratively. If you would like any input as to how to rule on the subject, I'm certainly here to provide context.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Ben?
I assume you're now cautiously optimistic that the heritage tree, after all this effort, will in fact survive.
Yes, cautiously optimistic is the opportune terms here. Certainly, construction itself is its own beast, and I like to err on the side of caution when it comes to that process as well. So, on to the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to say anything this evening? And since this is technically a new proceeding, if you'd give us your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name's Corey Dunn. I'm with D+K. I'm the architect. Address is 3215 West Division Street, Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you. Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the very thorough synopsis of what we're looking to do here. Since this is technically a new matter, I will just kind of Bring back up the reason behind why we're doing an addition. Obviously, Lauren and Charlie, they bought a house that is over 100 years old. They wanted to save it. At the same time, they want to renovate it and bring it up to today's standards. A couple of the items that they were looking to achieve with this project, one is they currently have a two-car detached garage in the rear yard, which is falling into disrepair, does not have any power. They have 2 electric cars, and part of that is they need to have proper power to be able to charge the cars. At the same time, they need a semi-conditioned space so that when it gets super cold out, that it'll actually still charge the cars. So that was item number 1 in the project. Item number 2 was they wanted to be able to have a safe passage from the house, or from the garage to the house. Ideally, they would have loved to have had the garage attached to the house, but realistically, with the way the house is situated on the site and not wanting to put in a huge driveway, unfortunately, that just wasn't in the cards here. With our first petition, we were trying to keep the garage closer to the house. Obviously, that had negatively impacted the heritage tree. So we went back and looked at a whole bunch of different scenarios. Now we're further from the house, but the breezeway still provides safe passage, which is something that's important, especially with the fact that Charlie and Lauren will be expecting a new child, their first in about 2 weeks. So safety is going to become even more of a concern as their family starts to grow. And then the third thing that we have is Lauren and Charlie are both real estate agents. They both work from home. Now that they're going to have a baby, having that ability to have a little bit of professional space away from where they can, break out and concentrate on business is even more important. And then the last part of it is Charlie has parents that have health concerns and issues, and when they do come to stay with them, this would provide them a private space on first floor, which again, safely, they don't have to navigate a bunch of stairs up and down flights. So really, those were the things that they were really trying to accomplish. Essentially bring a 100-year-old home into today's standards, which, as we all know, the community wants to save the character of older homes. So, kind of judiciously being good stewards of the property, let's make sure that it sticks around for another 100 years. So that's why we're here. Well, that's why we're doing the addition. Why we're here tonight is we've got a unique situation here. We have an undersized lot. It's a corner lot, so we have 2 front yard setbacks to deal with. We have a reduced rear yard, which gives us a very small amount of lot coverage that we can do. And then coupled with that, we have 1 heritage tree of significance. And by the time you start subtracting out the 2 front yards, the rear yard, and the heritage tree, we have a very limited footprint that we can build within. And so really, it's this act of gymnastics to really try to figure out how do we balance and protect the integrity of the existing home, yet still put an addition on to bring it up to today's standards. And so we looked at a series of alternatives. As Carl had mentioned in the initial summary, the initial petition that we put together, we wanted to stay within the footprint, the buildable footprint. We wanted to stay within the FAR. Unfortunately, the heritage tree was going to be negatively impacted by that. We went through that. It seemed like there wasn't going to be a way forward with that solution. So then we went back to the drawing board and started looking at alternatives and really trying to balance. We spoke about this before, what's right for the property, what's right for the homeowners, what's right for the neighborhood and the community as a whole. And so ultimately, we wanted to balance all those equally. We want to make sure that the house is still livable. It still makes sense to make the investment into it. And really where we landed was putting the addition in the backyard. And Carl, I don't know if you've got, actually the site plan works fine. What we really did is we started looking at, okay, we've got the 2 trees. Now I know the one in the back, the mulberry, isn't a heritage tree by definition, but it is a more substantial tree. So if we can work around it, and if Patrick says that it's worth saving, our intention is to save it. And so really what we did is we started more or less moving the rectangle around on the property, figuring out where do we not negatively impact the existing structure, but still accomplish the goals of what we're trying to achieve. And so ultimately, and we went through an exercise of could have been 10 different iterations. And ultimately, we landed this was, in our opinion, the right solution where it balances all the things that we're looking at. Now, unfortunately, what it requires us to do is move the garage a little bit further from the house. It requires us to encroach to the front yard setback on Forest, and it requires us to encroach a little bit into the rear yard. And as Carl said, we're still going to have to ask for lot coverage relief on the rear yard, and we also have to ask for relief on the FAR because we no longer qualify for the bonus. Again, if this was a traditional inline lot, we wouldn't have to ask for any of these variances. We'd be able to build within the buildable footprint. We would be within the FAR. We wouldn't need rear yard relief. So really the hardship is based on a unique situation of the front yard setbacks, the tree, the rear yard lot coverage. So ultimately we landed with this proposal. A couple things that I would like to call attention to is the current house is 14 feet, 1 3/4 inches off the front yard setback on Forest. So while we are going to be encroaching to the front yard, we will be 21 feet off of that property line there, so we will be 7 feet further back. Obviously, we'd prefer to not encroach into a front yard setback, but in this situation, we want to be sensitive to the neighborhood, and so we do have it set back. And really, our limiting factor is that 20-foot diameter from the heritage tree. As Ben would attest to, we'd prefer to be further away if we could, but it's going to put us closer to Forest. So we wanted to stay as reasonably as far away from the tree as we could without going further and further into the Forest front yard setback. And then the rear yard, really what we wanted to do is stay as tight as we could, staying outside, again, that 20-foot circle for the mulberry tree that's back there. Also being able to logistically be able to pull out of the garage and turn around and make your way down the driveway. So that's really ultimately where we kind of landed with setting the house or the addition where we did. We still want to maximize the rear yard there and be able to create a garden that is both private for the family, but also it's something that the neighborhood can enjoy and see into. As Charlie has attested in previous meetings, they've already done significant work both on the house and the yard, and they have plans to continue enhancing the landscaping when the addition is done. So that is essentially what our plan is for this proposal. When I'm done fielding questions, we're going to have Patrick with Davey come up because we have taken great care to put together a plan, worked in conjunction with Ben on how can we responsibly come up with a way that we can protect the trees to minimize the impact on them so that, not only the heritage tree, but all the trees along the east property line so that we can have the highest likelihood of being able to preserve the trees as possible. A couple of things that we talked about doing is we're going to limit the overdig on the east side of the garage where the heritage tree is. We're going to limit it to 2 feet. We're also going to hand dig everything that's within that area. And then there are going to be a series of posts. The breezeway, just to remind the board, is going to be supported on piers like you would build a deck. And we're doing that so that we can minimize how many holes we're digging into the ground and how many roots that we may potentially come in contact with. And any of the post holes that are within the 20-foot diameter circle, we're going to hand dig. And if we start getting down and we hit a major root, we're going to move that pier over so that we can miss that root structure. And Patrick has a more detailed plan there, so I won't go into too much detail for that, but we do have a substantial plan to help mitigate any negative impact that we have on the trees adjacent to where we're going to be building. So that's my quick summary of what we have.
Vice Chair Bay.
One brief question. If this were to be granted, would you be planning on going along with the alternative location for the breezeway where it would attach to the garage so as to move it further away from the tree?
So we would be happy to discuss it. Our preference would be to keep it on the east side of the property as shown. Essentially what we would like to do is keep as much of the backyard intact as possible. Now, having put the addition where we have, we've eaten up some of the yard that we prefer to not eat up, but at the same time, we understand the importance of keeping the tree and what we need to do to keep the tree. And so one of the things that Patrick will speak to is he feels that we have a better than, I forget exactly how he words it, but we have a good chance of being able to save the tree with the plan that we have in place. So we're trying to balance, maximize the rear yard, but still be respectful of the tree. So happy to have the discussion.
Fair enough, thanks.
Any other questions at this point? I guess we'll ask Patrick, do you want to come up next?
Thank you.
You should actually be handling the juggling, I guess, but. And if you will please provide us your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Patrick Etherington. I'm a certified arborist with Davy Tree. We're out of 28981 North Herky Drive in Lake Bluff.
Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So, Charlie and Lauren wanted me here to kind of discuss, I think, the tree preservation plan, and it's been good working with them. I think initially they didn't realize the impact they were going to be having on the tree. It looks pretty clean on paper, circles and squares, but when you get out in the field, it's a lot more squishy, and you can't just, push things around and say, well, it'll be all right. And there's not a hard line. I wish I could say, yeah, 15 feet is good, 20 feet is good, 15 feet is bad. When we're dealing with a mature tree like this, obviously everything is variable, but we like to start with saying the drip line or about 1 foot per inch of diameter, so 30 feet away would be my ideal world. But 20 feet away, I'm pretty comfortable that we're not going to be impacting greatly any structural roots. And so moving it to where they did, I think is good. The other reason we like to keep a distance is because during the construction process, things are going to get encroached on. And the more we can be proactive, the better off we're going to be once the process gets underway. So where they've got it at now, I think we've minimized impact on structural roots. We're impacting kind of one corner of that area of the tree's root zone. We're going to be doing measures in the planning process to minimize impacting the root zone compaction. They're going to have a good tree preservation fence up in an area they can't get into. We're going to be the area outside that fence where they need to be working. We're going to be doing things to minimize compaction, which will impact those roots. The piers as a foundation for the breezeway is a very good way to do that. And then post-construction, we've got a tree preservation plan that kind of covers mitigating that compaction, kind of restoring that. The oak tree is in what I would say average condition. So it's not, I think it's not going downhill. It's kind of holding its own. It's not in great health. I'd like to see a little more growth on it, and I think there's some things we can do to kind of encourage that once they're done. One of the benefits I'm hoping to actually get out of this project for the tree is to improve drainage, because right now it's the low point in the yard, and a big mature oak tree like that doesn't like sitting in wet clay for extended periods of time. So I think the way they have it work now, we can provide a very sufficient tree preservation plan that will, I think, increase its odds to better than 70% of survival. I mean, nothing is certain, but in my experience, projects like this, we come up with a good plan early on in the process, it's got a very reasonable chance of surviving and possibly even improving its shape as opposed to doing nothing for it down the road. So, that wasn't too long-winded. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Are there any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Wood, do you want to come up? And you know the routine, so you're just your name and address for the record.
I'm Charlie Wood. I'm at 178 Prospect Avenue.
Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but
I do.
the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I've been up here a few times in front of you all, and thank you again for having us back. I hope we have a good chance at succeeding tonight. I guess Corey touched on, a large part of it, but, we feel that, although it's not our ideal to move the project where it is now, we actually do like it, and in some ways we like it better. I think it's going to be really pretty for us to have this on the opposite side of our yard and look out of our living room and see it. We're really excited about the construction plan we have and the design for it. I think it's going to be really helpful for my family. Like Corey said, we do work from home. We have, and Mark's going to touch on it later, we have about 600 square feet in our house that's essentially unusable in its current state. Let me clarify. 300 of the 600 are 2 rooms that have no heating or cooling, so we can really not use them during many of the seasons. And 300 square feet, which were bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, had to be converted to closets. It's a house built in 1910. Each room had a tiny wardrobe, about this big. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think you could fit all your stuff in your rooms, your clothes, your shoes, your whatnot, into a closet of that size. So we lost 2 bedrooms to closets. So we have minimized a lot of the, functional space in our house, and we're adding a functional space, which will double as a guest space for my family, for guests. That'll be a lot more usable and private and safe for my aging father who has Parkinson's. What else to touch on? I really wanted to maximize the yard space, like Corey said. I mean, I just have visions of my, future child in 2 weeks being able to run around in that yard. Hopefully it'll be more. Perhaps the pool someday. I don't know that whether it's me or a future homeowner, we wanted to have, a central space in our yard to enjoy. And we've consulted very closely with Patrick on this tree preservation plan and hope that we've made the reasonable adjustments. Having heard from our neighbor today, they emailed us. I know they presented the comments to you. Hearing their support meant a lot. So, yeah, that's about it for me.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? And I guess your attorney's coming up next.
I guess so.
If he wishes, it's up to him. Now, don't screw it up.
Mark Lichtman, attorney at law, 1555 Eastwood Avenue, Highland Park, Illinois, and 134 North LaSalle, Suite 750, Chicago, Illinois, 60601.
Thank you. Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. The other thing I wanted to also add is that this is going to also comply with all drainage requirements of the city of Highland Park. This lot in this house is very unique. It has it's a 113-year-old home. It encroaches. I don't know if there was a zoning ordinance in effect at that point when this house was built, but it encroaches both the front line of Prospect and Forest. It was originally an undersized lot, and we did comply with the city's contiguous ownership requirements and furnished 4 titles going all the way back to show that this property is not contiguously owned. It's a corner lot, and as a result of it being a corner lot, there's 2 40-foot front yards. The tree also creates an unusual hardship because it's 7 feet away from its property line, and if you add another 20 feet to that, you get essentially I would call it a building line of 27 feet. Since there's only 100 feet of width and there's a 40-foot front yard setback, that gives you, it really compacts the lot width to 37 feet. So it makes it this very unique. You wouldn't normally see something like this. Offsetting that, however, is if you were looking onto Forest Avenue, there is an easement. That's a very wide easement. It looks to me like it's about 40 feet of easement, and there's no sidewalk. So this, as a very practical matter, will take off the impact that you would otherwise see if you were driving by it, because effectively, if you take into account that 40 feet plus the 21 feet it is from the property line, that's 61 feet, and it's a one-story, very modest structure. The rear yard encroachment is designed so that they can maximize their yard. The driveway is essentially in the same condition. The driveway is in the need of replacement. The original proposal was for lot coverage area because the garage necessitated that, and that's why we were here for the bonus FAR. The petitioner has testified, we talk about FAR, but not all FAR is created equal. In a home built 115 years ago, there were different requirements, and this house had a tremendous amount of dysfunctional space, about 600 square feet. We're replacing part of that with the home office and bringing this house into 21st century standards. We've gone to tremendous lengths and made sacrifices for the tree. We're going to employ all measures for tree protection, and it's going to be monitored by the city forest and our arborists ourselves. We're seeking a garage. The garage is approximately 576 square feet. I did a garage study I submitted, and in that garage study, I actually went to all the homes like around one block, east, south, west, and even north. And you could go onto the Lake County Assessor's website, and you can get all the information as to how your neighbor's square footage is for the garages. And I got them, and I actually furnished that to the board. The average square footage of a typical garage in this area, surprisingly, was 787 square feet. And if this house would have been bought by anybody other than our client, they would have been seeking probably building a 3-car garage. This is a 2-car garage here. Again, they need it because they have electronic cars. If anybody's been out to the site and they've been here, you might have seen a 3-phase extension cord going from their house to their cars to charge them. And by having these electronic cars, this also does sort of promote the city's green initiatives that they've had. The home office is really needed. They're going to be expecting a newborn in 2 weeks, and anybody who's had kids knows that you can be in one part of the house, and when that baby's screaming, you can hear them all the way at the other end of the house on another floor. This is not a home occupation as allowed by section 15406 of the ordinance. They're not going to put up any signs. No one else is going to be working there other than them. They have no inventory. It's not open to the public. I'm sure they'll have a computer, a printer, and a scanner. And my clients, they intend to reside in this house. And their present intention is to reside in this house forever. They made a significant investment, not only in time, but in money in this house. And I would tell you this, and they alluded this at the last meeting, all the other buyers of this house wanted to tear it down, and they saved this historic house. And that goes in line with the city's historic preservation ordinance. We've really done everything we can do regarding tree preservation, and this is an interior lot. And if this, strike that, this is a corner lot. If this is an interior lot, we wouldn't be here. What would be in the back would be simply a side yard variation. Wouldn't even require a side yard variation. So essentially, we have this penalty for it being a corner lot. But also, if you go to this area of town, there's not a lot of traffic. There aren't people driving around or anything like that, and there's no sidewalks along the forest side of the house. There's one other thing that this house by granting this variation does. If anybody's been out there and you've looked where the garage is for our clients and then to adjoining properties, there's like 3 two-car detached garage, and it looks a little motley with all that. And this will clean up that area of my client's lot, and I think it'll help with the other 2 lots also. I'd like to go over, I'd submitted written standards on this, but I'd like to go over the standards for granting a variation. The first one is that the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations of the zoning ordinance in which it is located. This, however, does not mean that the granting of the variation is based solely on whether the owner can make more money from the property. As I had indicated earlier, my clients, they're living here for their use and enjoyment. They're not living here to make more money from this house. They're not looking to sell it. If you take into account the combination of the tree, the front yard, and the rear yard, you'd have a 20, you'd have basically a 33-foot envelope. It's compacted. The bonus FAR, in a very real sense, they just want to have functional space so that they can enjoy this property for their own use. The garage is a 576 square foot garage that, will be able to hold their cars, maybe some bikes, whatever else that they have, that you have. The driveway's essentially in the same place, and as I indicated earlier, any other buyer would have wanted a 3-car garage. The second standard is the plight of the petitioner, a hardship which would result from the strict interpretation of the regulations of the zoning ordinance, is due to unique circumstances, and the proposed variation will not merely serve as a convenience to the petitioner, but will alleviate some demonstrative and unusual hardship, which is generally not applicable to other properties within the zoning district. Well, again, this is a corner lot with if you take into account that's a 100-foot lot and you take 40 feet off of it, that does have an impact on you. And you combine that with the heritage tree being 27 feet from the property, from where you can build here, from the property line to where you can build, you have a significant plight here. We didn't create this plight. It just happened this way, and this is a demonstrable and unusual hardship that's not generally applicable to other properties within the same zoning district. Again, if this were an interior lot, we would not be here today. The third standard is the particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical condition of the subject property would not result in a particular hardship upon the owner, as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were carried out, or the application of the zoning code to the subject property has a discriminatory effect. Well, if we were looking at the physical surroundings that create this hardship, this existing 113-year-old house has no other place to attach to the garage. It simply doesn't. You couldn't really put it on Prospect. You couldn't put it next to the house on Forest. And because of the tree and where asphalt would go, there's no other place that you could really put the garage other than where it is right now. And so all of these create a hardship. There's just no other place to put it, and it really needs to be over where it is, because their sunroom is on the east, not their sunroom, their mudroom is on the east side of the property. And so a normal floor plan, you would have the garage, then the mudroom, and then the kitchen. So this helps also. The next hardship is that the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having a proprietary interest in the subject property. And my clients did not create this. This is just something that happened when they had bought this house. Basically, they're just trying to improve it right now. The next variation is that the proposed variation, next hardship is that the proposed variation will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other properties or improvements in the neighborhood. There's no way this will be detrimental. If anything, this will enhance the neighborhood. Our client's making an investment in the neighborhood. They're cleaning up those three garage, 2-car, detached garage in the rear. The house will have a finished look. The addition's gonna look like the house. It's gonna be beautiful. And it will add value, and it will increase property values, and it will have virtually no impact on any other neighborhood properties. So we feel that this is only going to help the property. And we don't feel it will have any kind of impact, taking into account the 40-foot easement. The next standard is that the proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase the danger of fire, or endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. But as indicated earlier, I feel this will increase property values. I think it actually could even reduce the risk of fire, because you're getting rid of those 3 detached 2-car garages in the southeast corner, and it has no impact on light. It will have no impact on the neighbor to the south. It will have no impact on the neighbor to the east. The people to the south, you're far away from. And the next variation is the proposed variation will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. We feel it balances off the house. We feel it will add value to it. It will save the heritage tree. And I think overall, it's a relatively elegant plan. And the next standard is that the proposed variation is in harmony with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance. The spirit and intent of the city of Highland Park is to try to attempt to preserve historic homes. This home is a 113-year-old home that our client is restoring. And they should be encouraged, and people who live in this town should be encouraged to do this. There's 2 front yard setbacks, plus the structure, plus the tree, that are creating these hardships. Again, if it was an interior lot, we would not have this. It also, in a very real sense, if you think about it, the city has these green initiatives. My clients have an electronic car, and they're doing the environmentally correct thing. As it relates to the tree, they're going to be hand digging around the garage, and that's a much more expensive way of digging a foundation, but they're doing it to save the tree. Again, those piers will be hand dug, and sometimes you have to trust the property owners that they're going to do what they feel is best for their property. And I think that they've done that here. They've moved it 20 feet from the tree. They're trying to save it. And I think they should be applauded for this. At the end of the day, I don't see any impact here. I think it's a positive addition to this neighborhood, and I think it's a positive addition to the city of Highland Park, and it saves this good old grand house here. So, are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions at this moment? I have one, probably Charlie's going to want to answer it. The letter we got was from if I'm looking at your front door, from the neighbor to the left of your house, if I'm correct? Yeah, this thing's not oriented right, so I'm confused on directions. East.
And that's east.
Okay, the letter came from the folks who border where the breezeway is, on the top side. Have you talked to the neighbors on the back side now that the garage is closer to them?
It's an alley.
It's an alley?
I think it's an alley.
I mean, we sent out the notices. but
Okay,
I've
I just didn't
not-
know if you'd had any communication with them
I
since
sent
it's
out the
not-
notices. I mean, when the initial proposal came through, I mean, frankly, she didn't even ask the scope of the project. She was like, let me sign. I'm very supportive. So
Okay.
I don't anticipate any issues. I have tried to reach her. We kind of cross paths. We don't really cross paths that often. So I've not spoken directly about this change plan. No.
I just wanted it on the record whether or not you talked, that's fine. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this matter? Not seeing any? I will begin with member Yablon. Sorry, I did it again.
It's okay.
I was thinking the end of the alphabet, but I turned that
We're
one.
going reverse alphabetical.
Yeah, no, it's close.
Actually, can I start with a Carl question, which is there anything as the board that we have to do, because this is a separate structure that has plumbing, electricity, that could potentially be, even though this isn't the intent, I'm just dotting i's, crossing t's, that could be a rental unit, that it,
The board, so yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that was just, actually, our staff already discussed that, because we also look at these things. No, but that's, I mean, the board, to the extent that something is connected to the standards of approval, you can dive into anything you want, but I would say that you don't necessarily have to dive into that, because staff, we already looked at this and are aware of that, and we do not think it meets the definition of a secondary dwelling unit.
Isn't it only zoned for single-family
That
housing?
is
Annie?
correct. They would not be allowed to have a secondary dwelling unit. But based on their floor plans and their layout does not appear to be designed for that. I do have a procedural point, but don't want to interrupt you, member.
no, please.
Yablon.
You answered my question perfectly. Thank you. So, go for it.
Chair, can I just say something
Yes.
procedurally real quick? As I was sitting here thinking about the heritage tree thing, I just wanted to say real quick, so this meeting was noticed for the zoning relief as well as the heritage tree removal, and it was also both on the agenda, both the zoning relief and the heritage tree removal. And so my recommendation to the board would be, consider and dispense with the zoning first. There is an approval order. Perhaps there will be a motion on that. Maybe there won't be. Maybe there will be a motion to continue or a motion to deny. But my recommendation would be to consider the zoning first. Then, after that's considered, my recommendation would be that the board ask the applicant if they want to withdraw the heritage tree on the record. If they don't want to withdraw it, the board can still continue that to another date, can ask for an approval order at another date, or ask for a denial at another date. Those are my only comments on that. I just wanted to make sure we're procedurally clean and sound on that.
Okay, gotcha.
We could also deny it tonight as well.
Well, you'd have to direct for a denial order, or, well, yeah, no, I think I would recommend a denial order, at least that you direct for a denial order. But you could,
Unless the applicant withdraws it.
Yeah. Member Hendrick,
Are you done?
were you done?
Did you say anything?
I didn't, no, I didn't say
She
anything.
did.
I just asked a
She
question.
asked a question, sorry.
It's okay. In terms of where my head is, one, I'd like to thank everyone for being here again. And I'm very appreciative of the measures that have been taken to come up with a solution that works for the heritage tree and for the residents. And I very much appreciate that. I would be in favor of this because I do believe the standards have been met. However, I would like to see, and I think this is possible, in any approval order for there to be a sentence that includes all of the tree preservations that have, measures that have been discussed this evening. Whether it be the hand digging, the pylons, all of those things, so that it's part of our order.
Okay. Member Hendrick.
I'm also in favor. I believe the standards have been met. Like I was concerned about when I asked Carl that question, I am going to build up the record just a little bit here. The property is already non-conforming. It's a corner lot. It would have been eligible FAR, the heritage tree, which if you are an interested party, you can go back and look at our meeting minutes that are referenced in the packet. It definitely creates an unusual hardship here. I also thought the attorney's point about the easement on that side of the property was a good one. That's unique to this property. So for a lot of the reasons discussed both in this meeting and beforehand, I believe the standards have been met here. I would not ask the applicant to move the breezeway. I believe that you have already done, you have done every reasonable effort asked of you. So I don't think I would condition any more on it. And I would say just for the rest of the board, if for some reason we do consider the heritage tree order, or I would deny that one still. But I do believe the zoning standards have been met, and I would approve what really is before us right now.
Thank you. Member Trushansky.
Well, I think all the standards have been met. I was in favor of the project last time. So now with the heritage tree not even in the picture, it boils down to whether or not all the standards have been met. And the uniqueness of the lot, I think, really answers that question. So I'm in favor of it. I don't think that there needs to be any other type of language that's added. However, if adding additional language is contingent on everyone else agreeing and getting this moved forward, then I would obviously add it.
Thank you. Member Zurinsky.
I agree with my colleagues. The standards, in my opinion, are met. I don't really have much to add on why or how they've been met, but I do believe they've been met. And I just want to thank the Woods for preserving this house, preserving the tree, and preserving neighborly relations. I know this process is tedious and not inexpensive, and appreciate everything you guys have done to get here. So I support you, and I'm also on board with the order as presented without any additional conditions.
Thank you. Member Vice Chair Bay.
Never have so many worked so hard to save so few trees. And again, as Member Trushansky said, I was for this before. I'm certainly for it now. I think the standards have been met. I think you've gone above and beyond, and good luck with the project.
Thank you. And I'm going to agree with my colleagues. One, I want to thank all the parties. I want to thank your neighbors. Their letter tonight really helped to know that they had thought about it, looked at the diagrams, and took into consideration what their thoughts were, as well as that of the forester. This city, it's a Tree City USA, I believe that's what it's called. We value our heritage trees in particular. I actually do live in a house built in 1912. I understand. Thankfully, previous owners took 4 bedrooms upstairs and converted them into 3 larger bedrooms. They took out the first floor bedroom and bath to make it into an eatable kitchen. I benefited from their reconfiguration, so I know you've put a lot of work into your thought of the reconfiguration. And I appreciate that you're keeping an older home in Highland Park. I am, obviously I was a little worried, but I'm glad that your neighbors are on board. I think this fits in with the neighborhood, and will make a nice addition as far as making the house, bringing it up to your needs and hopefully future generations' needs. So I would be in favor. Davis, do you want to chime in on this one?
No comments right now.
Thank you. Council Member Tapia? Thank you. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
Can I ask if anyone agrees or everyone disagrees with me about changing it to add, like, preservation measures as described be included?
I'm not opposed, I just think it's necessary.
I agree it could be included if I had my druthers as far as you're talking about the manner in which they're gonna do the construction just to protect the tree.
Yeah, all the things that were
I think
discussed,
it's certainly their
the
intentions,
hand,
but couldn't hurt to include it.
I don't know. I wouldn't need the condition to approve it because they testified under oath here. To me, that has to mean something, so. I trust them, so I would.
pinky swear?
Does, Carl, does the city oversee that? How, to ensure that they're doing the hand digging versus bringing in a big machine near their tree?
So Chair, if I may speak, so the
Yes.
city forester is here, and if you wanted to, Member Yablon, you could ask the city forester if they felt any additional conditions were necessary, or if they feel they have the authority to, under code, to require those additional measures be taken. In terms of changing the approval order, you know, if you want to, if something wants to be referenced specifically, you know, like a specific sentence or two, or something in the packet, and that you want to adopt an amended order specifically like that, I'm comfortable, as long as the chair is comfortable, I'm comfortable amending that and having the chair sign it at a later date so that the applicant doesn't have to wait till April 20th. But if there's more to it than that, then this would have to come back to April 20th. So I guess I had two things to say. The first was you can always ask the city forester what their opinion is, and the second was just that matter of procedure on the actually drafting an approval order. And of course, the chair would need to be comfortable with that as well.
Well, the city forester is standing there, so you've heard the question from Member Yablon.
It'll be expected as part of the city's administrative review of any construction moving forward. So it'll be part of the permitting process, and it will be expected that as a condition of approval of those permits, all the measures as diagrammed will be required.
Awesome. Okay, so I have no need to make
Okay.
a special edition.
So we'll entertain a motion.
Member Yablon makes a motion to accept the order as drafted.
Second.
And a second by Vice Chair Bay. Carl, when you're ready, we'll take a roll call.
Okay, so this is a motion by Member Yablon to accept or adopt the order as drafted in the packet, and a second by Vice Chair Bay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Member Trashansky.
Aye.
Member Beck is absent. Member Yablon.
Aye.
Member Zoransky.
Aye.
Member Hendrick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bay.
Aye.
Chair Cullithur.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Congratulations. Carl will follow up with you tomorrow or early next week.
Chair, I do recommend that at this point in time, as to the heritage tree matter, that several options. You can either, one, invite the applicant up to just verbally withdraw that on the record, or that item could be continued.
He's
and they
willing
can
to
withdraw
withdraw.
the
He-
deed,
he's-
or it's still ripe for action. It's still
Okay.
ripe for action.
He's
He-
ready.
Happy to do that right now.
So we're gonna withdraw.
Okay, so,
Withdraw the application.
okay, so we will record in the minutes that the applicant has withdrawn the request for heritage tree removal.
And
Thank you.
very much for all of your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Best wishes to your wife and future child.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any time now. So that's why she's not here. She apologized. She's not feeling
Oh,
great.
trust me, we understand. Get your sleep in now. Okay, that brings us to the second piece of new business on our agenda, which is 2023-VAR-002, the property at 667 Broadview Avenue. The appellant is Todd Payne. Carl, we're ready when you are.
Thank you, Chair. All right, this is for 667 Broadview Avenue in the south part of the city, south of the Ravinia Business District and Roger Williams Avenue. The applicant is Todd Payne. As the chair stated, the proposal is for an addition onto the rear of the home. This is in the R6 zoning district. It's also in the small lot overlay zone. Meets the minimum requirement, 5,200 square feet. It's approximately that. The existing home was built in 1929 for the county assessor And important to this case, an addition was done in December of 2016. The request for relief to exceed the maximum allowable floor area of 2,080 square feet by 154 square feet to a proposed 2,234 square feet. This is a Chapter 150 zoning code request. This is an aerial of the property, regular in shape and rectangular. This is a survey compared to the site plan. North would be on the left side. So the street is on the bottom. So the proposals for that blue shaded addition complies with all setback regulations, height regulations, meets all zoning code requirements except for the floor area requirement. So the elevations, they were in the packet. These are the floor plans in the packet. So the FAR analysis, so what's proposed is within the bonus. They can't use bonus until December 2023. There has to be a 7-year period that passes from the CO, Certificate of Occupancy, until you can use it. And that CO is issued in December 2016. So they're not eligible for bonus yet. And so the applicant decided to submit for a variation to get it now. So other comments, there are none, including no public comments that I received for this. And that just summarizes the request.
Did the applicant put on the addition approximately 6.5 years ago, or was that a previous owner?
I thought you might ask that just as I was sitting here. So I wasn't prepared to answer that, but hopefully the applicant can address that.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Any other questions for Carl? Member Hendrick.
Carl, this might be a silly question, but if we were to grant the variation, would that impact the amount of bonus FAR available if they look to do something else in the future?
No, I don't think so. They would still be allowed to use bonus once. They would theoretically have to wait the 7-year period, but they could use whatever the residual amount was. I'm not sure there is a lot of residual. Bonus is 2236.
Yeah.
And they want, oh, well, it's essentially 2 square feet, but still hypothetically, yes, they would still be allowed to use this 2 square feet as long as they waited.
Thank you.
A 1x2 addition.
A room class. I'm just curious.
Any other questions for Carl? Not seeing any? The applicant here. Would you like to step up? It's up to you. Do you both plan on speaking?
We can both.
Okay, so if you'll please provide your name and address for the record.
Todd Payne, 667 Broadview Avenue, Highland Park, Illinois, 60035.
Kelsey Payne, 667 Broadview Avenue, Highland Park, Illinois, 60035.
And do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's your floor.
I didn't realize we had to have lawyers.
I know. I'm sorry we don't have a tree to remove.
No, you're not. So, realistically, we were just asking for a variance because we moved into this house in 2016. We did the remodel, actually 2015. We bought the house and we had the remodel done, and it was pretty much ready to go in May of 2016, right? But we didn't close out the permit, and so we have that long period, and then they're like, oh, if you don't close out your permit, it's a year permit. So we're like, oh, so we had to get it closed out. Essentially, it was a fault of our contractor for not closing out the permit, but I guess it would fall me too, so I don't want to blame it on him solely, as I should have known better too. So essentially, we're asking for a variance in the fact that it's 8 months until we're eligible for the bonus square footage, and we intend to use it in December regardless. We've been in the house 6 years. We bought it as a starter home. We
had 1 kid at the time when we bought it.
Yeah.
Now we have 4.
And so we didn't anticipate, staying there longer than a couple years, but we ended up falling in love with Ravinia. We're really close to downtown Ravinia. We walk down there quite a bit. And so we don't want to move. Our kids are kind of implanted here. Our daughter's in the dual language. And we'd like to just, 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and so that's all functional, but our kitchen is just, it's very, very small, and so it makes it very difficult to cook dinner for the family, and we were just hoping to, bump this out a little bit and move up the timeline and hopefully get it done this summer, but we also understand it's a variance and, the fact that we haven't been there for 7 years, so.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, it just, like you said, the house is almost 100 years old as well, like the previous people, and the kitchen is oh so tiny, and the current kitchen, you have to go through it to get to the basement, and if you open my oven and my freezer at the same time, they meet, and I have 4 kids that run up and down through that way, and being able to do this addition and space out the kitchen and kind of lose that foot traffic area where I'm doing all the cooking would be so nice to not be always afraid that one of my kids is going to get burned or hit their head on a refrigerator. So we're just hopeful to get going on the project. Would be lovely.
Thank you.
Do we need to go through the letter of, like?
You may, it is your case to make, so.
I have to make it bigger.
Okay, well then why don't you go ahead and do that?
Oh, I don't think I think you're pretty good. So we don't plan on reselling. We're here. Our babysitter actually lives right next door. It's a very convenient commute for her. And our kids have friends in the neighborhood. We love the neighborhood, so that isn't an issue for us. Like we said, with the zoning variance, we are within our limits that we want. We're just asking for that couple months before that 7 years from our certificate of occupancy, having had been in December 2016. The hardship I mentioned is just a real-size kitchen would be just lovely, and being able to actually cook meals and not be so crammed and having additional space when I am trying to prepare those things and having a safer area for the kids as well. We did not create this hardship. I'm sorry, I'm just like reading one by one. We have notified everyone in the neighborhood. Nobody's upset by it. Our backyard, actually, the wall behind it is not even a house. It lines up to a city lot behind Walgreens. So we're not blocking or anything. There it is, where those trees are. It doesn't encroach on any setbacks, as they had mentioned before, on either way. So that would, it doesn't impair any existing properties adjacent. The character of the neighborhood, it's behind the house. Like they said, it doesn't break any like height variations or anything like that that you can't do in that neighborhood. It's all right behind the home, so most of it wouldn't even be visible from
And our architect specifically designed it to match the addition that we did 7 years ago, so it's all cohesive.
And we believe it is in harmony with the spirit and intent of the zoning book.
Okay.
That's it. Is that all you got? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this matter? Not seeing any either. In that case, I will begin with Member Trushansky.
To me, this is a no-brainer. This is very, very simple. You wouldn't even, if I understand this correctly, you wouldn't even need to be here if you wanted to begin undertaking this in December of '23.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we're below the square footage, right?
That is correct. That is correct. That's a factual statement, yes.
Okay. And if we were to grant it now, you would be able to start your construction in the summer, right? And have you been told that it's easier to begin construction and do construction during the summer months than in the winter months?
I mean, I guess it's a factor of snow and what they can do if things freeze.
So it's probably easier, right?
Probably
Yeah,
easier in
okay.
summer.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Thank you. Member Zaransky?
I agree. Again, ditto on the no-brainer. 7 months from now, it's, just a building permit, and I think it's a great project and look forward to it.
Member Hendrick?
I'm also also in favor. It's just a timing issue. The standards have been met, and I would just point out that applicant, they also submitted written responses to the standards. But yeah, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Member Yablon.
I'm in favor and I agree with my colleagues.
Vice Chair Bay.
Yeah, I can think of no conceivable reason why we should force you to wait for no reason. So I support it as well.
I'm going to agree with my colleagues. I was torn because there is that piece where you did create it yourself, but because it's just a matter of timing, I don't think that's a reason to delay the project. So I would be in agreement as well. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the approval order as submitted.
Member Hendrick would second that.
And Carl, when you have a chance, we'll take a roll call.
Okay, so that's a motion by the Vice Chair Bay to approve or adopt the approval order as submitted or presented in the packet, and a second by Member Hendrick. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Member Trashansky.
Aye.
Member Beck is absent. Member Yablon.
Aye.
Member Zaransky.
Aye.
Member Hendrick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bay.
Aye.
Chair Cullithner.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Carl will follow up. He's a little swamped these days, but he will follow up.
We missed Kelsey. She was great.
She's now down in LaGrange.
We don't mention her anymore.
She ditched us, actually.
Thank you. That brings us to the third item on our agenda, which is 2023-VAR-003, the property at 1940 Emerald Woods Lane. The appellant is Joel Ballantyne, Midwest Arbor Corp. Carl, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, 1940 Emerald Woods Lane. It's a location map within the city on the west side of the city in a cul-de-sac. Actually, it's a through lot. This is the name of the applicants, and the proposal is to construct a swimming pool and then related improvements like patio and pool equipment. It's in the R3 zoning district with a minimum lot area of 40,000 square feet. The property is just over that. The house was built in 2002 according to the county assessor. I'll note on the site plan it looks like it lines up almost perfectly with the required setbacks, so that's usually a sign it was built a little more recently. I also think, I didn't reference this in the packet or report at all, but I do think the board had a fence variation for this property sometime last year. Of course, this is not necessarily related to that. This is a completely new application for something different. So this request is a Chapter 94 tree code request. This is to remove one heritage tree located near or approximately the center of the subject property, a 37-inch DBH diameter at breast height bur oak. This is an aerial of the property. That white outline is something I did. It doesn't mean anything scientific. That's just something I drew on there to roughly show where the heritage tree was. It is a through lot. It's an irregularly shaped lot. That impacts how the lot width is calculated. That in turn impacts how the side yards are calculated. This is a heritage tree removal request, but a pool cannot encroach within a side yard. And so there's context in terms of just how the side yards are calculated and applied. And again, it's a through lot that's irregularly shaped. The board, for those members that participated in this case last year, you may recall that the functional front is on the east along the cul-de-sac, and the functional rear is on the back or the west along Ridge Road, even though technically that is a zoning required front yard. And that also has a 60-foot accessory setback requirement. So even though there is a chunk of what appears to be buildable area, there's a 60-foot accessory structure setback because of the fact that is a zoning front yard. The applicant submitted this. I just threw that in there. Well, that, and I noticed that our aerial is when there's less vegetation, which I think we do on purpose because we want to see more of the property. And the applicant submitted this, perhaps it's from Google, I don't know, but that showed more vegetation, and so I thought that was kind of interesting to compare the two. So this is a site plan. Note that the site plan is tilted, and north is, well, it's kind of up. Actually, I don't know if it's 100% up, but it's somewhere up-ish, because west would be the bottom, because this is Ridge Road here. And so this shows the buildable area for a pool, because this is the 60-foot accessory structure setback measured from the Ridge Road property line. And so this is the buildable area for a pool. And do recall that, of course, the applicant's driveway and parking maneuvering area is up here as it goes up to the cul-de-sac. The blue is the home, and the yellow is the proposed 20 by 40-foot swimming pool. And so this was in the packet. I don't know how easy it is to see. This red line was drawn on by the applicant's team. The applicant their team drew that red line. And so the green outline is my approximate markup of where the heritage tree is located, and the city forester, Ben Miller, can comment as to what the green outline means. I think that's the drip line or the root zone for the tree. I'll let the city forester correct me on that. I want to make sure we get the facts correct. And then you can see the yellow shaded proposed 20 by 40-foot pool, and it does go basically, I mean, it's definitely within the green outline and then goes right up to the actual green dot or tree itself. Then, of course, there's patio around that the applicant proposes. The patio can encroach within a side yard setback as long as it's less than 12 inches in height from grade. The pool itself cannot go within a side yard. And that pool is not just to the water's edge. That's the vessel that holds, the vessel or structure that holds the water. These are alternate locations submitted by the applicant. The way the applicant depicted this, it would appear that the pool would, in those alternate locations, would need to meet or would need side yard relief. This is an applicant exhibit. I'll let the applicant speak for their own exhibit. This is a photo from the fence variation, and it showed the heritage tree when this was submitted whenever, a year ago or half a year ago. That's also from the applicant. But again, I do want to point out, even though when you look at that, it looks like there's more room to build than you think there is. Because remember the side yard setbacks, which are impacted by the irregular lot width and shape. And then also remember that's a front yard according to the zoning code, and it has that 60-foot accessory structure setback requirement. These are new photos the applicant submitted of the heritage tree. This is a city forester exhibit on the right, and so I'll let the city forester speak for it. However, I will point out, so I believe the city forester or their assistant drew this pink line. To the extent that that is the pool, to the extent that it just clips or encroaches over the side yard, that would need side yard relief. But to the extent that that's just pool patio, then that possibly works as an option, depending on different variables. And again, I'll let the city forester summarize their report, but just add that they just suggested relocating or resizing the pool to protect the heritage tree. No neighbor comments were submitted for this. So this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. This is a Chapter 94 tree code. And so the Zoning Board of Appeals should use the Chapter 94 heritage tree removal standards. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Carl?
For
Vice Chair Bay?
further understanding, Carl, the last rendering that you showed with the purple square, is that supposing that the pool would be the same size that they were going to intend to construct it, to your knowledge?
That I do not know. Fortunately, we have Ben Miller, if he is able to respond to that. I also know that he worked with his assistant, Joe Moda, on this.
Okay, I'll wait to get the answer. Thanks.
Any other questions for Carl? Not seeing any. Ben, would you like to come to the microphone?
Ben, or City Forester
Ben's
Miller.
fine.
City Forester Miller, if you want me to change the slide, please let me know, or you can
I'll let
have
you
it yourself.
Well, he gets the technology.
To answer the question, I believe, although admittedly this was drafted by Assistant City Forester Joe Moda, I believe the pink-purple square is supposed to represent the extent of the patio inclusive of the pool itself. But admittedly, I did not do the rendering myself.
And it's presupposing that the pool would be the same size that, as they are intending, just relocated.
Yeah, in as much as that's able with the equipment we had on hand, yes.
Any other comments the forester would like to make?
Simply that I believe that there are practical alternatives here. I mean, certainly there is a large portion of, I guess it would be front yard, that would be viable space for this kind of installation. And I think the encroachment into a setback would be appropriate here. If you look on site, areas just to, I'm going to screw up my directions here, but just, I believe that would be south of the existing patio, certainly could accommodate a significant sized pool. We are not talking about I believe we are talking about a significantly larger pool than you typically see on your standard building permit. So I don't think we're asking, the applicant is not asking for minimal relief here in terms of that. And simply that if you look at the evaluation of the tree in question, it is certainly a magnificent specimen. And the fact that it survived a full new single-family construction in 2002 is really a testament to the quality of this particular individual. Other than that, I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
I just have one question.
Yes,
Ben.
please.
You know, a few weeks ago, we kind of, got into, Member Hendrick kind of pointed out, with the standards for to meet a heritage tree, 30 inches is the number, and it's, even if it's 30 point whatever, it's still a heritage tree. It's not barely a heritage tree, it's still a heritage tree.
Yes.
Just for my own information, just curious, 37 inches, 180-year-old tree in excellent condition, is that unique for it, even in the subset of heritage trees? I mean, that seems like,
Yes.
there can't be that many of them. I guess that's my question. I don't know if you have a number of how many of those exist. I just, I don't know if you have an inventory, but just for my own information, just wondering, I guess for context also, like, how many trees in this condition, in this size, in this age, do you think are even in the neighborhood?
I couldn't estimate. I mean, certainly we don't have an inventory on private property. I'll tell you, on the city rights-of-way, where we do have an inventory, very few cross the 30-inch threshold, which is why the classification of heritage exists, to protect that very small subset of trees of those species that do exist on properties these days. And certainly that number is going down. Have I seen many trees that would, and many oaks of that size on private property? They are, I won't say common, but if you're going to see an oak of size, they're going to be in that general category, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Especially in the older neighborhoods, especially on the west end.
Got it. Thank you.
Please.
Member Yablon.
Just once, this is for my own edification, but too, what's the lifespan of these trees? And if, like, they hit like 40-inch diameter and they die, or like, what, like, how does?
So most of what you would consider a heritage tree, once we see them at that size, they're mature. They generally have urban impacts, so they don't tend to grow much larger than they are. They persist. Anything that alters site conditions, construction, climate change, or anything like that, generally brings that period in which they're subsisting into decline. That's what we see more often with these trees.
Is there an age of the trees, like how long they live for, like a?
I couldn't give an estimate. I mean, oaks, 200, 250 years if they're completely left alone. But in an urban setting, I mean, significantly less than that.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice Chair Bay.
If the pool were to be relocated where somebody from your office has indicated it could be relocated to, would that have any possible detrimental effect on the tree, or is that just far enough away where we wouldn't even have to worry about it?
It certainly could. I mean, we're still going to see, aside from the actual excavation itself, building out the patio, bringing in equipment, there still is going to be site impacts. the whole process of permitting is to reduce that impact. But the issue here is that there is a direct conflict between the location of the pool and the tree itself.
So much like the last case, if this were to be approved or they were to agree to relocate it, part of the permitting process would include the manner in which they'd have to construct so as to minimize the impact of the tree.
Precisely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not, thank you very much.
Just to clear, we're not looking at another option tonight, are we? We're just looking at this option only?
I believe so.
Okay. Right.
I guess we'll ask the applicant to come forward. You'll provide your name and address for the record.
My name is Joel Ballantyne. I'm of 342 Dean Street in Woodstock, Illinois, and Midwest Arbor at 1700 Holian Drive in Spring Grove, Illinois, 60081.
Thank you. Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Would it be appropriate to address the standards as
Yes.
communicated in writing first?
Whichever is your preference.
So a little context, I guess, with the owner of the property. They purchased the home in 2021 and moved into the neighborhood with the goal of ultimately having a pool space in their yard. And in purchasing the lot, they saw this, over 40,000 square foot lot, which had ample yard space and mature trees in the lot. And now in going through this process and putting in for permit and now being here, we understand that the area in which they can build is much more constricted without requesting a variance for the placement of the pool. So in order to try and avoid the variance process and locate the pool closer to the house, more usable for them, more integratable with their existing patio spaces, their desired location does conflict with that tree that we've been discussing. So in order to address the removal standards, the first part of the mandatory finding is the removal of the heritage tree will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And if we were to go back to the aerial photo of the neighborhood, you can see, based upon this photo, that Emerald Woods in particular, their cul-de-sac is characterized by all of these mature large trees that provide a dense canopy to this space, and the removal of the one tree in particular on the center of the lot really won't detrimentally have an impact on the character of the neighborhood. One could argue that it would really only be noticed by the owner of the property itself because of its central location on the lot and the fact that there are numerous large trees surrounding. The property itself has 39 other mature trees that are over 6 inches DBH and have been recorded on our inventory. The second point is the removal of the heritage tree will not be material detrimental to the public welfare and injurious to the enjoyment, development, or value of other properties in the neighborhood. Not going to alter the public welfare or be injurious to the enjoyment because it'll be selective removal of this tree itself. It'll allow additional light to enter into that property of the owners, and it's centrally located on that property, so it's not going to affect any of the neighbors. And the canopy itself is within the bounds of the property. And it really will have no measurable or noticeable impact on any other property surrounding it. The third point is the removal of the heritage tree will not impair or an adequate supply of light or air to the adjacent properties, increase the danger of fire, impair natural drainage, or substantially diminish or impair property values in the neighborhood. Again, we're going back to the points of it's located in the center of the property, just west of the house. It's not going to impair or change the light or air to the adjacent properties. It will not increase the amount of danger of fire. Removal of the tree will have no impact on the drainage patterns of the property. The property itself is very flat and has virtually no slope. It won't be adding or removing from the existing drainage patterns. It won't affect the public safety at all, as it's not located in an area of public access. And it won't change or impair the values of the surrounding properties, as the petitioner's property is the only one that would be affected by the value. And you could argue that the petitioner or the owner's improvement of the property by adding the pool to their property will only increase the value of the property and therefore further reinforce the values of the surrounding properties by his influx of this improvement. The point about there are no alternative options to the placement of the pool has to deal with the location of setbacks on the property and how restricted the space is that the pool is allowed to be built within. It has the two combined setbacks on the two sides, which, due to its irregular shape, restrict how much usable space there is to build the pool. It has the front yard setback off a ridge, which has an additional setback on top of that for accessory structures, which reduces it to the red triangle that we had on the slide, the tree in it. So really within this space, when we went through the different orientations of the pool, we were trying to minimize the amount of impact to the rest of the property and the surrounding trees on the property. And the majority of the trees on the property are on the periphery of the perimeter of the property. And the one heritage tree is the one tree kind of in the middle of the property that was present from before when the home was constructed. The home was sited in a manner in which that the pool couldn't be located any further forward on the property. And just the size of the pool, which we're trying to achieve, has some very specific uses to the client. Being at a 20 by 40 size, it's really the minimal length in order to swim laps. So one of the points of having a pool this size is to be able to use it for exercise. And as they desire to be in the home for a long time, they want to have a space outside that they can exercise in during all times of the year. And in order to do that, it needs to be somewhat close to the home so that they can use it later in the season, earlier in the spring, as swimming laps is one of the desires of the owners of the home, and using it for entertainment purposes with their family as well. So with that, we tried to place it as close to the home as possible while matching up with the features that are already existing on the property, and that ended up with a location that's impacting that heritage tree. So in the alternative options that we looked at on the slide with the blue and the green rectangles, we looked at shifting the pool and still staying within that buildable space. Further south on the property, we would impact a protected oak tree that's right near the edge of the buildable space. It's about a 20-inch oak tree, has a long life expectancy potential. And then we looked at the green space, but that would still result in getting very close to that heritage tree and impacting its root structure significantly with its placement. So in an effort to try and preserve the one protected tree to the south, we selected a spot for the pool which was much closer to the home. We thought that long-term that tree's viability might have more benefit to the property than the mature heritage oak tree that's in the middle of the property. Additionally, reduce the amount of available lawn space to the family. I know in the photos that were shared of the backyard that there's a large lawn space. That really is where the green part of the pool shown on the plan is, and it extends into that front yard setback area that we've been discussing. And that's really the space that the family like to use to entertain, play lawn games, all of that. So moving the pool out into that space really cuts down on the available area that they have for those outside activities. The last point on the mandatory findings, so the removal of the heritage tree is necessary for the reasonable use of the property. There are numerous properties in the neighborhood, include private swimming pools, and adding a pool to this residence is reasonable within the neighborhood in which they live. The pool is a traditional accessory structure such use to a property in this zoning district, and the zoning of the property is such size of the property allows for this. The pool's size and location has been designed to allow for the homeowners to use both exercise with lap swimming, entertain their family members, and occasional guests. And given the uncertainty in the world that we live, proposed installation of this pool is intended to allow the homeowners to enhance many aspects of their lives, including their health and well-being, by being able to spend more time at their home they recently purchased with their family, and the petitioners intend to stay in the home for many years to come and look to enhance their enjoyment of it. For the selective findings, the removal of the heritage tree is necessary due to a hardship that has not been created by any person having a propriety interest in the property, is not a result of the action or inaction of the owner. The tree was there prior to the residence that's there being built, and so and it's in an area of the property which is considered the buildable footprint, and due to the zoning setback restrictions of the property and the previously constructed improvements which define the locations in which we can build a pool, these were already established before the owners took possession of the property when they purchased it, and so the owners inherited these restrictions and did not create them as a result of their actions or inactions. The removal of the heritage tree is not requested merely due to an inability of the owner or occupant to enjoy some special privilege or additional right not available to owners or applicants of other lots within the zoning district in which it is located, nor merely due to a desire to make more money from the property, but upon a desire to facilitate the applicant's reasonable use of the property. And numerous neighboring properties include private swimming pools, and adding a pool to this residence does not afford them an additional right or special privilege within the zoning district. What's unique about this property is just the small area that they can work within to build a pool, as allowed by zoning. And the pool is a traditionally an additional investment in a property which does not result in a net positive return on the investment due to the sale of the property or upon the sale of the property. As a result of this, pool enhancements are the most about enhancing the quality of life at home and the enjoyment with their family and friends. The owners are most interested in using and enjoying the proposed improvement for years to come, rather than upon recouping their investment should they choose to sell the property itself. Usually when you put in a pool, it's for fun rather than hoping that you're going to get all your money back out of it. It's never works out in your favor that way, unfortunately. Removal of the heritage tree is necessary due to the unusual circumstances unique to the property that are generally not applicable to other properties within the same zoning district. We're back to the irregular shape of the lot, the fact that there are multiple front yard setbacks here, the additional accessory setback, and the restricted area in which they can build. So generally, most properties within the zoning district don't have the two front yards. They don't have the additional setback restrictions due to the irregular shape of the lot. And they usually have more space to site a pool without impacting existing trees on the property. So all these, combination of these factors reduces this area in which we can design within. the particular physical surroundings or topography condition of the property, including or without limitation the presence of an existing structure or sign, whether conforming or legally non-conforming, irregular or substandard shape or size, exceptional topography features or other extraordinary physical conditions results in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from mere inconvenience. The existing house was built in 2002 to within inches of those side yard setbacks. And the way in which the setbacks are calculated are defining where we can build. So it's the presence of the existing structures which are contributing to just the limitations in which we can site the pool. With respect to the forester's report and the location in which the alternative siting of the pool can be pushed, if we could go back to the plan that was done by the forester. We had internally looked at this in our design office and considered this rotation of the pool to fit within this space. The one thing, or there's a couple things that this does. It does get away from the tree on both sides. It extends out into the lawn space that we talked about before, but in turning it this way, it's still siting it between these two mature oak trees. And the root zones, which we've defined on this plan as the dotted line that's around these trees, are offset by 1 foot for every 1 inch of the DBH, which was how this pink rectangle was sited between the two trees. Now, that root zone is kind of an imaginary line. It's not necessarily the extent to which the roots go for these trees. The roots are going to grow underground towards nutrient and water sources. So the roots of the trees could be out to the drip line of the trees. They could be within this root zone as defined here, or they could be 3 times the canopy of the trees. It really depends on the soil composition and structure that's there. We really don't know until we start digging as to what's underground. So if we wanted or site a pool like this in between these two trees, there's a very high likelihood that we would impact both of them. In rotating it this way and revising the permit to submit this way, we would not be requesting removal of the heritage tree or any zoning relief. This is a permittable option, but it could be materially detrimental to both trees in siting the pool that way, and result in them declining rather than the selective removal of one to allow the other to thrive. If we go to the aerial photo. So what we're talking about is the red outline around the one tree canopy is the mature heritage oak tree, and the canopy directly to the left of it is the other 20-inch oak, 20-inch protected tree. So we're, as we can see that those canopies are connected essentially, and if we assume that the roots at least go out to the drip line of these canopies, the pool being sited between the two trees would impact both of them at the same time, rather than moving it having the pool situated close to the house as we proposed, and only impacting the one, which is fortunately the heritage oak tree. So, in summary, as we at Midwest Arbor design landscapes, we always look for ways to preserve as many mature trees on the property as possible. And in doing this, we try to site things in a manner which is a balance of both the client's wishes, their goals and objectives, and then good stewardship of the property, and trying to preserve mature trees as they add numerous benefits to the properties. However, in this case, in order to achieve our client's goals of having a pool space for his family and friends and himself to enjoy for many years to come, we felt that this was just the best option in their case. Oh, that's about all I have for now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is this your client?
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to add, sir? Okay, that's, I just didn't want to make sure if you wanted to get up, it's your property, your case.
I will say, can I get up here?
Yeah.
Yes, please. And if you will provide your name and address for the record?
David Barnett, 1940 Emerald Woods Lane, Highland Park, 60035.
Thank you. Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to add is, I mean, it's a gorgeous tree. And we would hate to lose the tree, obviously. We bought the house with the intention to build a pool. And if you're going to spend a lot of money on a pool, you want to put the pool in a place where you actually want it to be. And the alternatives that have been presented, yes, they're confined a bit by the setbacks and all that, but even if we weren't confined by the setbacks and all that, we'd probably want the pool where we actually have it right now designed. And, you know, I don't know that there's another alternative that really works for us. In addition to the fact that, you know, even if we did do some of the alternatives the way that it's been prescribed, it kind of feels crazy to me that that tree is not going to get impacted somehow through the construction of the pool, based on the way Joel described it, and I'd love to hear your opinion on whether that's true or not. So would I love to save the tree? Of course, I would love to save the tree. Will we do everything we possibly can to plant new trees around the yard? Is that a one-for-one? Probably not. But, you know, if you're going to build a pool and you want to build a pool and it costs a lot of money, you kind of want to put the pool where you want to put the pool. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Is the only reason why you want to build the pool is, through the wonders of the internet, I looked up that the average size of an in-ground pool is 16 by 32, and you're proposing to build one that's 20 by 40, and that's strictly because you want to be able to swim laps and use it as an exercise pool as well?
I mean, certainly want to be able to use it as an exercise pool, yes. You know, but we want to be able to enjoy a big pool also. I'm not sure what else to say about it. You know, 20
Yes,
by
I'm
40,
asking if you
16.
considered making it a little bit smaller to
I mean,
alleviate some of the problems.
we have discussed it, but the location of a 16 by 32 or a 20 by 40 is going to have the same exact impact as we're talking about either way. I mean, the tree's going to be right in the middle of where we want to put the pool. So,
Doesn't solve the lap swim, but how about just a different shape, like a free form type of pool? Have you looked at any options like that?
I mean, we've discussed, I mean, you can chime in here. I mean, we've discussed other options, but we want to have an automatic cover for our pool for their kids and for safety reasons. And you,
If you'll step to the mic, please.
The biggest challenge with a freeform pool is the safety factor, and with their kids, being able to secure it. It's not possible with a freeform pool, as you need a rectangular surface in order for that auto cover to automatically operate and make it safe for anybody to be in the backyard without supervision when the pool's closed.
Is it not possible? It just doesn't look as good. 'cause
It's not possible.
Different shape.
They're
You can't put like a rectangular cover over a freeform pool? I've seen it done, it's just
not
why I asked.
without extreme expense. Like,
Okay.
at that point, it's very, very costly.
Or you could manually cover it
But
as opposed to
to
having
that-
an automatic cover.
To that effect, though, you would end up with a rectangular shaped pool, just with an irregular form inside of it, so you're still having the same sort of excavation requirements for, getting that rectangular cover in place.
Member Yablon?
Oh, I was just going to say, from personal experience, I know that while it's not an automatic cover, that you can certainly do a gate that does a free-form pool without a problem. Like that there are other safety choices besides a push-button cover, correct?
There are, the owners have put in the fence this last year in preparation of being able to build a pool, so they've already enclosed their yard as far as safety goes there, restricting anybody from the public from getting back there. As far as there's becomes a maintenance issue if you don't have a cover on the pool as well, especially with the mature trees in the vicinity of it and the amount of debris that can get in the pool on a daily basis. In today's age and the trends of the pool industry, a rectangular pool with an auto cover is a very common type of construction.
Okay, thank you.
The yard's already fenced. When you build the pool, how are you accessing it from the cul-de-sac, or are you accessing it from Ridge?
We're in discussions with the village regarding that. We're looking at coming from Ridge from the back and removing panels in order to have as minimal of an impact to the rest of the property as possible. There's a path. It's actually just about the perfect width to get our equipment back there, and that'll keep us off of all the landscape in front of the house.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify something. Is there anywhere that you can put that pool in the yard while also having it be 20 by 40?
Not within our buildable area.
So would you be able to ask for other variances to accomplish that goal without having to remove the heritage tree?
We would have to, yes, ask for so we can orient the pool sideways in the property between the two trees, as shown with the pink box here.
Okay.
That's realistically the only location for it, because we're constricted by that length with the triangle that's shown there. We only have a few feet either way to work with.
So then you would still be able to build 20 by 40 and not have to remove a heritage tree?
Correct. The challenge here is going to be trying to keep that tree from declining shortly after the construction work is completed.
Has there been any, did the city foresters say that that is an issue?
We can ask the city forester to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since he happens to still be here.
Yes.
Certainly, it's going to be challenging, no doubt. It already has infrastructure on two sides. The fact that it has survived in this condition that long tells me that there probably is a solid root base on those two sides. Impacting a third side, depending on how close they have to encroach on that critical root zone, what the unknowns are as far as where the predominance of its roots are under the soil, there is potential. Most likely, even best case scenario, there's going to be some impact. But it does not have a heritage removal application if it stays in that place.
Okay.
And I'd just like to point out that even option, the one that's outlined in blue, the code says that heritage trees are to be given preference. So
Yeah.
key trees, which that smaller one down there would be, that is something that is approved administratively. And if it's in the interest of preserving the heritage tree, the ordinance would say that that takes the precedent. Both of them are in similar condition. Both of them are, in conditions where that backyard, I believe, retains a lot of water, similar to our last case. So they both are on the same plane. When we draft our memo, we look at what the ordinance says, and the ordinance says the heritage tree takes precedent.
Okay. So if I could just, one more follow-up on, oh, no, with
Follow.
Midwest.
Can we go to?
Yeah.
Member Yablon, and then we'll come back.
Since you're standing up there, what in terms of, just going to call it horizontal, doing the horizontal, what do you think, and this might be too hard of an ask, is the risk to both trees?
There's some. I mean, as it's drawn, the line is supposed to represent the critical root zone, and we talked about this extensively with 178.
Sure.
The rule of thumb is 1 inch for every foot, 1 foot for every inch of trunk diameter. In theory, most of your critical root zone should be in that area with an adequate plan. That's what we assume is your sanctified area that you do not encroach on. As drawn, it doesn't encroach on either. Are we going to see some encroachment from building the patio with equipment and all that? Yes. Is it possible we lose portions of structural roots? Yes, it's possible. I would say there's also other encroachment into side yard setbacks that could be granted that would allow them to build this size of a pool. Not shown on this one, just south of the patio. I know there's a significant amount of space, one protected tree in that area, very close to the rear of the property. I think that would achieve all goals, but it's not currently diagrammed right now.
Okay, thank you.
Member Trushansky.
Yeah, just one more question for, I guess, what would be the main drawback if the pool was built to the size specifications that the owner wants it to be in the area where the heritage tree doesn't have to be removed?
It's, the main drawback is moving it further away from their residence and taking up more of their usable yard, as well as the potential for the impact on the 2 trees down the road.
How much further away from the house would it be?
It's about 20 feet further.
And so how much more yard would they also use?
So in our proposed plan, we really kept the pool out of their usable yard, so you're going out roughly half the pool size, so another 500 square feet would be out of their lawn space, and sort of cutting that space almost in half.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. I will begin with Member Hendrick.
Unfortunately, I think this is an easier case for me, and it's not on the favorable side. I don't believe the standards have been met. I would note that 1D of the mandatory findings says practicable, not practicable. And as a board, we have, dissected that language before, but it's a higher standard than the word practical. Jamie has given the Webster's definition. I won't get into that. I actually think, though, even if it said practical, there are practical alternatives too. So I think that sometimes we do parse that word, and I don't even think that it meets the lower threshold of practical. I think that not only could this work, I see other avenues to potential areas that, could work. I don't think the pool has to be as big as it is. And that leads me to my second kind of hang up here on the standards. 1E says removal of the heritage tree is necessary for reasonable use of the property. I think for me, it's hard to get to a step where I say, yep, you have to be able to use your property by putting a pool on it. I know you'd like to, but I have to respect what the standards say. And even if I do get to the point where I'm saying, okay, a swimming pool, it can be a reasonable use, then I have to think about the size and all the other variables. And for me, the standards are not met, and there's multiple reasons why.
Thank you. Member Zaransky.
Unfortunately, I agree. I think there certainly are, practicable alternatives in this situation. I think there's a path to get you the pool that you want and the size that you want, and I know that a lot of what you focused on was trying to stay within your buildable footprint, which I think is commendable. Obviously, I would have to, I can't speak for the board. I would be in favor of, looking closer at those, side yard and front yard setbacks to get you the size pool you need if you're protecting all the trees in the property. But, as presented today, I can't support removing that tree to allow for this pool. So I apologize.
Thank you. Member Yablon.
I, once again, am in agreement with my colleagues. Unfortunately, I don't think the standards have been met. And I would also agree that, that while I appreciate you trying to stay in your buildable footprint, we meet twice a month, 12 months a year, or to be here for variances, specifically for hardships, which include heritage trees and working around them.
Thank you. Member Trushansky.
Yeah, I like trying to grant things whenever I can. And just as a general thing, from my understanding, it's a lot easier to grant a variance for a setback than it is to remove a heritage tree. And, I'm trying to get there, but, you're able to build a 20 by 40 pool that's 20 feet away from the house, and you wouldn't have to remove the heritage tree. So, that's certainly a practicable option, and it's still allowing you to ultimately do what you want to do. Because of that, I can't grant the variance for this.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bay.
Yeah, I don't have that much to add. I always think it's a shame that when someone, and I can appreciate the frustration of a property owner that can't do what they want to do with their own property in a manner in which they believe they should be able to put things so to maximize their enjoyment and the value of the property, value of their time there. But nonetheless, we are obligated to apply the standards that have been promulgated by the city. And I don't, as Member Hendrick spelled out on several of them, I just don't think it's a real close call at this point.
Thank you. I want to thank you for coming this evening. It's been a long evening. With the two other cases before you. I want to thank staff as well. I can't get there either, I'll be honest. 1D and 1E are just, they are, to me, the two of the hardest pieces of the mandatory findings to get around. And if we ever get tripped up, it's generally on those two. So unfortunately, I do agree with my colleagues, and I don't see there is a practicable alternative to placing the pool where you've proposed that would save the tree, and the heritage tree, as the forester pointed out, takes precedence over the two other trees. So with that, I guess we could ask the applicant if they would like to withdraw the application for the removal of the tree, or we could entertain a motion. We'll let it be up to you.
The outcome is the same.
Yes, we just need to procedurally close the case
He
somehow.
obviously has the right to extend if he wants.
Yes, or you could continue it if you think.
That member back will sway.
Would you like a continuance, and then if you wish to withdraw between now and then, you can do that?
Or you could amend your application.
Application, yeah.
That leaves your options open for you.
So our next meeting is the third week in April, if I remember correctly?
That is correct, Chair. So there is no first meeting in April. The next meeting will be April 20th.
I look like a liar.
So are you okay if we continue it till April 20th? In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd move to continue this matter until the next meeting on April 20th.
And a second?
Member Trushansky seconds.
Thank you, Carl. We'll take a vote.
Thank you. So that's a motion by the Vice Chair Bay to continue this matter to April 20th, and a second by Member Trushansky. This is the vote. Member Trushansky?
Aye.
Member Beck is absent. Member Yablon?
Aye.
Member Zoransky?
Aye.
Hendrick?
Aye.
Vice Chair Bay?
Aye.
Chair Collier?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. We will see you in April, hopefully. Thank you.
Yes, so that serves as notice then for all those attending that this has been continued to the Tuesday, excuse me, I'm doing PDC, I need to think ZBA. It's been
Thursday.
continued to the Thursday, April 20th, zoning board of appeals meeting here at City Hall, same place, same time, 7:30 PM.
Carl, if they were to amend their application and ask for zoning variations as opposed to heritage tree removal, would they need to renotice?
Correct, and there would be time for that, given the time from now to April 20th.
Okay, just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a staff report this evening?
I do not have a staff report other than, the way the applications work, today was the deadline, and so I don't know if they're complete or not, but I'll just say that there were 3 applications possibly on track for April 20th, as well as now this one, so we're looking at a possible 4 application.
Oh, even though we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks, wouldn't that deadline for the 20th be?
That deadline would be, today's the deadline, it's a 5-week deadline.
Oh, okay.
So yes, so it's possible there will be 3 applications plus the one that was continued. But again, that deadline was just today, so I haven't reviewed them. I don't know if they're complete or not, but we had 3 come in, so.
Okay. Awesome. And then miscellaneous, we've put in the packet, it was brought to my attention by Member Hendrick.
Was it?
Well, yes, there was an evening when you wanted to know if you could call into the meeting rather than attend in person.
I don't remember that.
And it occurred to me that I was at a city council meeting where 2 members of city council called in. So I inquired. And there is this policy whereby we are with pre-written form submitted, I guess, to Carl, that we are permitted to call in to meetings and vote. But they have to be for business travel, sickness, and I can't remember the third one. But that information is in your packet. So if it is the attempt to ensure that we have a quorum. If you can't make it, but you're just home because you're not feeling well, or in your case, it might have been weather or whatever. I forget why you asked.
I don't remember this at all, but.
Yes.
It sounds like me, so I believe
Yes.
you.
It was a rainy night. You were afraid of the snow coming from the other side of Highland Park. That you can call into the meeting. We have to verify that, yes, it is your voice on the phone. You can listen to the proceedings and be included in the roll calls.
Is there like a special number to call, or how do you?
No, you would, we'd have to, I am sure Carl has that information someplace.
What's that, sir?
If they were to call into the meeting.
Well, I've never,
Yeah, it's kind of kludgy. When we do in city council, Gita calls us on her cell phone.
Okay.
And it's not the best sound quality, and, you can hear some people by the phone and people far away, but, we manage it. Sometimes the question has to be repeated so it could be heard.
My personal thought would be, it's better than having a meeting canceled at the last minute because we don't have a quorum.
Quorum, yeah, that's what I'm thinking is.
We're not going to do it on a regular basis, but,
Yeah, it's a very good
If
alternative.
you spike a fever at 4 PM and we only have 4 members who are going to be present, and Carl or his successor can say, well, you can call in.
And have an incoherent member of the board?
Well, I said it's kludgy, but not impossible.
Right.
You just have to be savvy about where you place your
Just
phone.
throwing out that it's an option. Also, if you're going to miss your 3rd meeting in a row, it would be a good way to stay on the board.
Yeah, I have to say it's been helpful.
Yeah.
And it's not abused. If it was abused and people were calling in every week for some, they're always off on the road then you have to question whether they can
Right.
manage both things. But it's done on occasion.
And we've had our hands slapped in my 6+ years on the board for canceling 2 meetings consecutively. So, because that's inconvenient to the applicants, because that puts them off by, a long time on their,
Last couple of years have been pretty good. I don't think there's been a single meeting canceled for quorum since I've been on the board for 2 years.
yeah, we haven't.
Never had
Um,
it 3 years or.
Pandemic helped that a lot.
Yes.
Everyone's attendance rate went up during the
Are
pandemic.
we still live streaming these? Is this still a live stream?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we're live
We're on
streamed,
YouTube now, I believe.
or whatever it's.
Wow. Big time.
Yeah, and by the way, this stipulation is only, for whatever reason, it's only for phone call. You can phone call it in, but you can't Zoom it in.
Interesting.
Yeah, 'cause
Even
we
though
don't
Zoom would be a
Zoom the
better
meetings.
quality.
Well, wasn't this passed in I saw the date of this was 2006 was when this?
Yeah, it's been around for a while. We just
Yeah,
didn't
so
real.
Zoom is,
We just didn't know it existed.
I mean, I'm sure if it was updated.
Yeah.
Is it a local
Zoom
thing
or
or is it
Zoom would
like
be
a
included.
state thing or?
But it's a state law. so-
It's a state law.
Yeah.
Chair,
May I bring up,
Yes.
for Carl first?
I'd like to read just one section from this, and admittedly, I'll just read it, but it does say, roll call and quorum. A quorum of the public body must be physically present at the meeting.
So 4 of us would have to be present.
Well, right, yeah, well, it actually doesn't say much more than that, that's relevant. It's just my quick initial read, and I actually, Planner Faywell, she told me this needed to be in here. I have not reviewed it, she told me it
Okay.
needed to be in, and so.
I
put
just
it-
wanted everyone to be aware that there is this
But
policy out
Probably
there.
a
I'm
good
not
thing to
sure
call
it would-
Art about to get.
Should be
quintessential planner.
Well, city council does
It seems to me it can't be used to.
for the
make
quorum.
though.
Okay.
I just want to point.
But it would work but you'd be there for the vote.
But
so.
right, you'd be there right, it could be an additional vote, but I'm not sure.
Would-
But again, this is a quick read, quick read.
The question is, would you count towards the 4 if someone else disagreed? So,
But, I mean,
okay, so we'll look into it, but everyone should be aware this may be a
Vote would have to
potential.
count or else.
yeah, then your vote doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's a
Yes.
good question for Hart.
Yes.
So you calling in next week or are you going to be here?
Yeah, I'm gonna be sick.
We don't post pictures from the beach.
Yeah, pina colada.
Anything else this evening, folks?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up something else under miscellaneous. It's, something that I know I personally have raised several times, and yet everybody seems to be in agreement, but then it never goes anywhere. And while Councilmember Cappy is here, I'd like to address this, that we have talked about the concept of having some type of amendment to the requirements for variance to give us a little bit more wiggle room. Some type of either a balancing the equities type standard or something. And seems like, I don't know, we can talk about it or get it on the agenda to talk about it at a future time, but I, for one, would be interested in carrying forward. I think there's a lot of cases that we want to do something and that we are, by strictly following the ordinance, we're not allowed to do it. But if but it otherwise makes sense. And I think, everybody said, oh yeah, it might be a good idea to have a little bit of, equitable control over whether we can massage the ordinance a little bit at times. I don't know what the procedure would be for, I guess it's something would have to be passed by council.
Eventually,
How
but,
would we get it
but,
in
but,
front of council?
Carl, can you chip in on changes to the code? Does that go through PDC?
Well, so to amend the zoning code, first of all, there's only 3 entities that can even authorize a zoning code amendment: the city council, the plan and design commission, and the city manager. Those are the only 3 entities that are authorized by city code to even initiate a zoning code text amendment. Of course, to approve it has to be the city council, and that's only after a public hearing at the plan and design commission, where the plan and design commission makes a recommendation. I do only want to add, may I add one more thing?
Yeah, you may add anything you'd like.
We,
It's great to have Carl back, isn't it?
What's that?
It's great to have you back, Carl. I know it's bittersweet for you, but.
A few years ago, we did amend the code, a big chapter in section 150.707, which is all the allowed encroachments into the yards. There's now a subsection 16 with a sub A through J, with all sorts of additional allowances. Now, that can't capture everything, nothing ever will. But that was an attempt to try to reduce or eliminate common, and this is not to suggest anyone is wrong.
We talked about this. This was like the
Yeah.
neighbor near me who put up the 2 big posts concrete, 7 feet high, things at each side of their driveway.
Oh, address columns?
Well, they're bigger than address columns, they got lights on top. But yes, they're driveway columns. And you said they were now under this new section of the code, so they've gotten to the point where things we used to have to approve, because it was in the front yard setback,
Right.
are no longer required.
Well, we also at one point, if memory serves, had some proposed changes that we reviewed as a board going back probably 3-4 years ago. And we kind of all agreed that there were a lot of things we didn't like about these changes, and then it just died in the water. I mean, never heard about it again, never, I guess it was, our feedback was given back to the council or the Planning Design Commission or whatever, and we never heard anything about amending it further or,
I think
you know.
that was on the steep slope zone
It wasn't just,
stuff.
it wasn't just
But
steep
that was
slopes.
part of it.
It may have been part of it, but it wasn't just steep slopes.
I remember, there
It
was.
was kind of.
It was revamped.
Chinese
It was-
Menu approach, having multiple, having the option of choosing, meeting 3 of 5 standards or something like that.
I don't recall what happened to that. I mean, it seems to me that was pre-pandemic, and I don't always remember what happened before and where it went before the pandemic. But I do recall that there was discussion of that. What I think happened is, what happened is that instead, we did the amendment to try to eliminate and reduce. And again, this isn't to suggest that other things can't be considered deliberated. I don't mean it that way, but we try to do that other amendment. But what I don't know is, eventually we'll have to track these, and we'll have to see how many applications we're getting and what kind of applications they are, to see if our amendment had any impact on that. But that's only one specific thing. It doesn't necessarily address your comments, Vice Chair.
Member
Yeah,
Hendrick
if
had
I-
a comment.
Yeah, I mean,
License and curb.
I think we need to get on a cadence of maybe once a year, in the accumulation of all the cases that come before you, if there's a particular pattern, one sticking point or one thing that keeps being the same dilemma, may not over and over and over again, but enough times where you go, this just keeps being nonsensical or creating dilemmas for us that it shouldn't, then it can be converted into a ask, right? Can we look at this particular standard or this particular X, and then we can make it as concrete as possible, and because it's happened 4 or 5 times, I mean, that's material. If it happens once, then it's not material, right?
Right.
So I would pay attention to that, and I think Carl can help us kind of do an evaluation just once a year to say, look, here's the pattern. This is one issue that keeps coming up, and let's put that on the table.
If I'm
recommend.
understanding Carl correctly, he's saying there are only 3 ways to initiate it. One is that it has to go on the city council agenda, which we know what it takes to get on the city council agenda. Another would be something initiated by the city manager, which would be Gita, or something getting on, it would have to go on the PDC's agenda. How does something get on the PDC's agenda?
Well, right, either the Plan and Design Commission, the city manager, or the city council has to direct the text amendment, and then once it's directed,
Yeah, I don't think it's that
our
complicated.
staff does it. We do it.
Yeah,
We do.
I don't think it's that complicated. If this group says, look, we'd like to address this very particular thing, via Carl, we bring it up to Gita, and then Gita will help navigate the process.
Can I respond to Jamie?
Yes.
So a couple things. First, we introduced an entire new set of standards. Carl, I thought you or somebody with you drafted them, but we got an entire, you're right, your memory of it is how I remember it as well. I will say, collectively, all 7 of us as a board did not like the standards. And so, I don't know for sure, but I think our opinion mattered, and that's why those specific ones fizzled out, why, there wasn't more to say after that. That I don't know. I will say, though, personally, I don't want a balancing test because that's too fluffy for me. Like, that would be, I'm just being frank, that would make my job a lot harder. I think that the approach that Councilman Tapia said about, like, if we see something over and over again and having a concrete proposal, I like that better. I will say, if we were to put something a little more loose in, and I know I've mentioned this before when this has come up, and Carl has said, well, administratively, there is some stuff that they do. I think, for me, not a balancing test, but a de minimis test. That I have seen enough in my years on here, where it's like, someone will come and they're like clipping over the line. And, you know, Carl, I think, has responded to me before. It's some of that stuff they do take care of on the front end when they get it in. But we still see some pretty small asks, and some of the stuff, I think, can fall under de minimis even after we deliberate. So I would say, for me, I would like the idea of a de minimis standard more than a balance.
Well, I think that's what they did with the change they did. I think we're seeing fewer things that have fallen into this de minimis, they can handle it administratively.
Right, and I think, I'm not married to a balancing test, it's just kind of
I know, I'm just-
a concept, and I know I've been on the board now for, I guess, 5 or 6 years, and going back to, Ken Henry was the first chair when I came on, and if I heard, we talk about things raising over and over again, I don't know that there's anything specific, but I know he used to use the phrase ad nauseum, geez, this really makes sense. It would be nice to be able to grant it, but because we are obligated to enforce the code, we can't grant it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm, it's those situations, without picking a specific thing, whether it's de minimis, whether it's for, whatever it may be, to have some flexibility in those situations. I think we've denied some things, and it's been a shame that we've had to deny them when they really would have been, beneficial to our community and to our reputation as a place to work with people to, get them to, it just.
Yeah, and I think in what you're getting at, and I know this is hard to codify, but I think there's a place where you have the standards, which are literal, but you also have principles, right? And one of those principles could be around something that's de minimis, right? If it's really denying somebody, that's a very reasonable request, and just from a little bit, it doesn't qualify, then one of our principles, I think, as a city should be to be reasonable.
Right.
Well, reasonable standard.
Well, and
That's the first one.
what I am sort of hoping we will get to, because I have been told that at some point in the future, the city is going to be looking at its master plan, that as they get into some of these zoning districts and they realize, oh, their backyard lots, the zoning board has granted a significant number, whatever that may be, of variances to allow a garage to be put in, that the city changes the standard and says.
Yeah, and that's part of the pattern thing that I'm suggesting,
Right,
right?
exactly.
This has been a problem, and we haven't been able to cross the line, or if this is so obvious, we're granting it every single time, it should just be removed.
Or to carry forward with what you were saying, to acknowledge, nowhere in the code is there something that acknowledges some of our other policies and being able to take those into consideration in their ruling, like our policy in favor of historic preservation, which may have come.
But see, this is what I wonder, though. I wonder if you took it to city council, whether because for me, I think instead of creating a new test, you could just soften some of this language, like the first standard saying, can only be used in this way, or you literally change the word of the heritage tree to say practical.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. That's a policy decision. I wonder whether you would get support to do that or not. I mean, I agree that it would allow, like we softened the language, it would allow us more flexibility, but maybe city council or the city itself doesn't want us to have.
Yeah, but I
only one way to
think
find out.
that's checks and balances, right?
I know, I'm just saying.
But I think this is a legitimate body that it has wisdom, and you show up every single time, and you're listening to the citizens. You're closer to the citizens on this issue than city council is. So it's legitimate for this body to recommend, hey, we want city council or Gita, whoever, to look at this. Now, doesn't guarantee it's going to be granted, but that's the process, right? And then someone like myself or whoever's the liaison can be an advocate for the recommendation or help navigate it. So I think we have to because these are legitimate things. And, in city council, we face things that, it comes the opposite, things that we're supposed to abide by, like new development and the overhead electrical wires and telephone are supposed to go underground. I mean, it's in the code. But every single time we allow it.
Oh, I hate that.
And the reason why now, the debate, right? It's so expensive.
Mhm.
I
And
mean,
how-
it's like hugely expensive. That everybody wants the wires to go underground, but it's not practical or practicable or affordable, and it would kill the development. So city council, right or wrong, every single time allows that exception. So now we're talking and we say, should we even have that in the code?
Right.
I think the first step would be for us to put it on our agenda and see if we can reach an agreement of something that we would want to bring to city council, or at least reach majority agreement as to some recommendation. I mean, obviously, Will and I may have
The
some
garage
difference of opinion.
is the first thing that
That's a
comes
good
to
one.
my mind,
That's a
is
good one.
like, because if I hear one more person stand up and say that they have a right to a 3-car garage,
To be fair, the owners never said that.
No.
oh, I'm talking
No.
about you.
Over you, not necessarily. We have had, and I'll be honest, there was a 3-car garage that I can remember in my history with a heritage tree issue, but it was a spec house, and all the builder had to do was make it a front entrance versus he wanted the side entrance. And, you know,
I do think you could put into the code fairly easy something that said, for purposes of this subchapter, a reasonable request is deemed to include a 20 by 20 garage, or whatever, it is. And I do think that that is possible, and we do see the garage one in particular a lot. And if you did just have that as an example there, I do think, again, it's if people want
But then
that.
when you have to define the parameters of what falls within a reasonable request. Is it reasonable because it's going to encroach? Is it reasonable because it's going to exceed the FAR?
Well, Jamie,
There's all.
or the
I
yard coverage.
I thought about that statute language for 5 seconds right now, but if I went back to the drawing table, I could do it.
I'll
But
give you another 10 seconds, see what you can come up with.
Yeah, but actually, why not use that as a test case? Because you're pretty much in agreement about this. There's some nuances you have to figure out, but you've seen it over, I've heard it for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And what a waste of time for all of you, for citizens, for
And for
something
them to
that-
bring their attorney, the cost.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
expensive.
and what, from
We're
a
gonna take
policy
business away from
perspective,
Cal, though.
yeah, from a policy
I'll give him
perspective in
business.
city council, we're trying to streamline processes.
Right.
We're trying to reduce red tape and bureaucracy, it's going very slowly, but this is the kind of thing that would qualify as something that we would say, this is what we're trying to get at, right?
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a good, I think Jamie's right. Let's put it on our agenda maybe to talk about, we can start with the garage issue.
Pick an easy one.
Is that really an issue you guys see like all the time?
Dude, all
All the time.
Yeah.
That and,
Yeah, I would say almost the majority of requests are somehow related to garages.
Well, like a 3-car, but like specifically.
no, 2-car.
No.
It
Two
depends.
car.
We've had people who come and say, I'm only asking for a 3-car, I could be asking for a 4-car,
Well-
because my neighbor has one, but, it's all over the board. But
Well,
it's-
it depends on where in Highland Park you're located. A lot of them, it can just be a 2-car garage.
Right, and
And we have sort of
we've
gotten into a 2-car garage should be a standard,
Uh-huh,
but it's not. We still have to go through
right.
the process.
Who's gonna build like a $6 million house in the lake, and he's like, how can you force me to build a 2-car garage? Like, it's just not right. It
Well,
really isn't.
Well,
You know?
you can build a bigger garage within your buildable area, by right. We're just saying.
But you get into
Ti- ti-
slope zone, you get into, there's.
I know, but I'm just saying, I do think you would start on the lower end. You wouldn't want to say, by right, you had to get a 4-car.
Too. Well, it's
No, but
like,
I
how
agree
about these old, old undersized garages that, are 80 years old, that
And we
some guy
live in-
wrecks and he builds just a standard 2-car garage, he has to come for approval, it's kind of silly.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I think we should put it on our agenda, and I agree with the councilman that perhaps the 2-car garage issue would be the one that we'd be
Yeah.
deemed that be the first test case to see if we could get something amended.
Okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, good for 2.
How do we put something on our agenda, Carl, of our own? Do we make a motion to do it? Or?
Can we do it not for the meeting on the 24th, when we're going to be here until
We
midnight?
can do it in December, as long as we do it.
Yeah.
at some point.
We'll have a short meeting eventually on the agenda, maybe Carl or whoever's in charge of it.
Yeah, we can always continue it if we put it on the agenda till next
Right,
time.
exactly.
We're good at continuances.
Yes.
Carl, is there any, sorry, I don't know if I'm switching, is it appropriate to ask another question?
Go right ahead.
Go for it.
Off topic. I'm just wondering, is there a replacement Carl in line for Kelsey, or she kind of catch everyone off guard, or?
The job position is open.
Got it.
And it's not closed yet. I have no timeline for that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Ow.
And just, one thing, it would affect this group, but it's a bigger issue. In watching all the different proceedings with different commission stuff, I feel from an equity perspective, I don't think we're informing our residents enough about how things work. I think it's inequitable for some people to be knowledgeable enough, or astute enough, or experienced enough to know to come up with a lawyer. Other people to not even know that was even an option, and I think there's a way to give more education, if you will, civic education, as people prepare to come. Because it should not be a surprise that maybe I should come with a lawyer.
The information on the website is better today than it was when I came on the board.
But somebody needs to know to look there to find the
Well,
information.
exactly.
That's an access issue.
But you can find the standards. In theory, you could watch a meeting to see what they're like, where some people have been known to show up 2 weeks in advance. But you're right. I mean, we can talk to the city communications people about how to.
Carl, when someone brings you an application, I mean, is that, everyone always says that you are amazing and give a rundown of everything. So I always just assumed you give kind of a brief overlay of how things work and their options.
You're correct. I like to think we do a good job at that, yes.
I mean, so do you say like, hey, if you want to bring an attorney, you can, or like, does that come up, or?
Right, well, these are all variable, right, and conversations with everyone will vary, but yeah, I think in general, we take pride to try to give really good service. We never presume the decision of a board. I like to provide what I call observations. That's how I count.
I love that Cheshire cat smile.
I call it observations, right, and I think this has come up before, but, sometimes there's applications that maybe don't come forward because we at a staff level really question, well, but what about this standard? What are you really asking for here? But to get back to the zoning text amendment, I mean, in my mind, there's basically two ways to do it. You either bite off specific structures. I know we took a stab at a variety of structures on that section 150.707 sub 16 amendment that we did a few years back. Then the other one is the standards of approval. And I do have in my notes from years ago, because I've been looking at my notes, because I keep track of all this stuff when I came to meetings over the years. The idea of changing the standards, but only for de minimis situations. And that was the last thing I was looking at. And I think somehow maybe the pandemic or maybe my transition to the staff liaison of the Plan and Design Commission, that one kind of got lost in the transition. But that's the one that if I had to dust one off, I would dust that one off. And the idea behind that was for a totality standard of approval, but limit it to only variations that are de minimis in nature, because we were concerned about all of a sudden putting the board in a position where you couldn't deny something. And so we wanted to only put the board in a position where you could apply that in de minimis ones, but I don't know, that's all I have to say.
Your notes sound, you and me had an email exchange.
Oh, on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I came up with the totality of circumstances paired with the de minimis, and Ken Henry was helping me.
I have notes on it, like I said, but I don't know what happened, either the pandemic happened or my transition to the PDC, but that's the one I would dust
I think
off.
pandemic is what happened.
Those are my comments, thank you.
Okay.
And, sorry, I'm going to ask one more, and that is, do you recommend for people to watch prior videos of the board or come to meetings so that they kind of get a lay of the land?
Yeah, precisely. Again, we don't offer any legal advice, but I know there's been certain applicants that the board gave more positive feedback on their presentation. I'll say, oh, you should watch that video and see how that applicant did their presentation or handled their application, right? So yeah, we do try to provide good service to residents and applicants, but again, we never presume the decision of the board.
Does everyone who files an application actually get some FaceTime with you, or Kelsey before she left? or-
Oh, most definitely. I mean, these things, and again, it's variable. Some of these play out for months, half a year before they even submit an application with all the back and forth questions, phone calls and emails.
The applicant could also tend to act more out of sorts to try and gain some support also. Oh, I didn't.
Just what you wanted broadcast across Highland Park this evening.
For the record, it's okay.
We're on YouTube now.
Encourage that behavior.
With this group, that does
Thanks,
not work. It does not work with this group.
We do like comedy, though, so.
Okay, folks. I will entertain a motion unless somebody has anything else to add.
Motion to adjourn, please. Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Bay, second by Member Zaransky to adjourn at 10:12 PM. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. So, Councilman, make sure that